Okay, let's get started. I'd like to welcome you to the November 3rd, 2021 City Council meeting. Roll call to my left, Dave Craven, Mary Bass, to my right, Richie Schut, Stapp, Ron Scholz, far left, City Clerk Treasurer Debbie Craven, Community Service Director Richard Krieger. So I'd like to have you stand for the invocation. Tonight's invocation is Pastor David Stapp. First Baptist Church. We have a floor.
Heavenly Father, thank you for making us in your image and giving us ideas and personalities and different talents and gifts. Thank you for each one that's here, whether elected or employed or volunteer, that's trying to make this a better community. God, thank you for the privilege of living in this absolutely beautiful area of the world. Thank you for all you bless us with. Now I pray that you would bless the decision makers, that they would be gifted with wisdom beyond themselves. And Lord, thank you that they bring all of themselves, personality, all those things. And Lord, help them to work together for the good of all. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. Okay, next up, item 4, approval of the agenda. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions by the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 5, approval of October 20th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes and October 27th, 2021 special council meeting minutes. We have a motion.
Motion to revise the question.
Okay. We have a second.
Sure.
All in favor?
Pardon?
All in favor? We will split. We're going to split to two.
Thank you much.
We're going to split to two approvals.
Then split.
Okay, explain yourself, Rich.
Well, I was not in attendance, and so I don't feel like I should vote to approve minutes for a meeting which I have no information on, or no record, video required of me, or otherwise was not able to attend remotely. So I would like to be able to abstain from voting on the special meeting which I did not attend.
So, Councilman, how do you vote? Councilman Craig? Councilmember Dowd? Councilmember Scott?
Aye.
Councilmember Stapp?
No.
Mr. Schultz? Motion denied. All in favor? Okay. Motion carried.
I'm sorry, it's really mushy. I have tendonitis. And everything's really mushy, so.
Item number 6, public hearing. We're going to do items A and B together. A is to advertise.
Point of order, we voted on motion to divide the motion. We did not vote on the
The
motion.
motion didn't cover it, didn't pass. Your motion didn't come.
But then we didn't vote on the original motion.
Yes, I thought we did.
Yeah.
I think you looked that direction. I don't know that we voted on it.
No.
Sorry.
So the motion to split was denied.
Correct.
So the motion to approve October 20th, 21 regular council meeting minutes and October 27th, 2021 council meeting minutes. We have a motion and a second.
No. I vote no.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, yes. No?
Yes.
Yes. Approving.
Okay. The motion approved. Okay, item 6, public hearings. We're going to do A and B together. Ad valorem taxes for 2022, ordinance number 2021-1002. And item B, 2022 revenue sources. Roger?
increase that we can do once a year, and it's based on last year's actual levy, which is $494,809.79. So 1% of that amount that the council can approve to increase the tax would be $4,948.09. And the property taxes go into the general fund, and the general property taxes help to pay for the sheriff's contract, the street repairs that we have done, and it's one of the two major sales tax that operates the cities in the general fund.
Okay. So we'll close the regular council meeting and go to public hearing. Any questions by the audience? No?
How much, I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said the amount would be.
$4,948.09.
Item C, Community Development Block Grant Program 2022. Roger.
This one I know about. So, in the back table, there's several handouts back there. So I'm just going to go through parts and pieces of the handouts for privilege of the council and those in attendance. Basically, this one is dealing with the Community Development Block Grant Program. That is an annual program that Spokane County basically runs the program. Tonight's meeting is the intentions of that we have to do as an applicant is to inform the public on the progress. Others may want to offer up applications to community development block grants. They're certainly able to do that. They have public service programs, infrastructure programs, public facilities programs. Infrastructure, where we typically apply, is a high priority program in the whole process. But even saying that, there's not a whole lot of money that anybody gets to apply for or work with. In the past, I know the greenhouse has applied for funding. I think Habitat for Humanity applied for funding for some of the infrastructure down there. I'm not sure they were ever successful. But, so this is the program that's here. Annually, HUD provides funding to them. This year, the amount of money going to the county is $1.7 million. In that, there's a competitive process that citizens or cities like us, public service districts, all those kind of folks go through an application process that's pretty competitive. And in our case, we are eligible because of the low and moderate income population that we currently have still within the city of Deer Park. The urban consortium of cities include Airway Heights, Cheney, Fairfield, Liberty Lake, Medic Lake, Millwood, Rockford, Spangle, and Waverly. So we all include all this, and we all have a low and moderate income percentage. The target for an area-wide benefit is 49.74% of the residents having to be in that low and moderate income category. We currently are at 54.64%. So that's how we're still eligible today. May not be eligible in July when they do the cycling of the funding again. They use the American Community Survey to do that. And we really don't know. It's kind of like the OFM just recently changed our population allocation from the federal census. We had a number of 4670 is what came out in April. They've adjusted us down to 4520. That's total citizens inside the city limits. So as that happens, these percentages will play up and down based on something way outside of our control. So we may get successful enough to be selected for a project and still may not get the funds in July. But that's the purpose of this program, is to go through the application process. It's geared towards benefiting low and moderate income persons. Our project deals with infrastructure. In this case, it's North Dalton well rehabilitation. It's the first source out there. The idea is obviously getting funds so that we don't have to pay a certain percentage through rates and so forth. We try to do with grant funds as much as we can. And so that's the purpose of this program. And again, there's other communities, members of the community can apply for these dollars. The challenge is we're notified the rules October 13th, the applications are due November 15th. So there's not a lot of time for anybody, unless you're in this realm of where the grants are, to try and compete for them. But that's the timing for how this is set up. So that's the one handout back there, and then there's several other parts and pieces in there about the program. It breaks out how much funds. Some of it goes dedicated straight to Spokane Valley. Some of it goes to operations of the block grant folks. And then as far as persons on that committee, Dee actually serves as a member on there. There's several, there's probably 25 or 30 people altogether in this block grant group that does the evaluations of the applications and makes the awards. And so that's the program that is out there, Community Development Block Grant. Our application is also back there on the table. And later in the council agenda, the council needs to approve applying for the grant and trying to get the funds. But basically, North Dalton Well is a source of city purchase in 1985. And the rehabilitation that we're talking about is from the well when drilled was for irrigation purposes when the city acquired it. Then we had to go through the process of getting the water rights for domestic use. But the well itself was never modified in the well itself as far as making it a better production well for the city. So what happens is we can produce about 600 gallons a minute out of that well. And then about every 5 to 7 years, because the well design, we cause, with the velocities of water through the stream, we cause a calcium or a bacteria to form, and it slows the water going into the stream. And so our production goes down about 200 gallons a minute. And it gets aerated, so that's how we get some of our air into the system. Well, about every 5 to 7 years, we could spend $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 making this fix. And so this grant is for doing the construction of a building around a well that we want to drill right next to the current building. In our budget proposal that you have, there's $125,000. That's our portion to drill the well, get that ready to go. And we do it with a cable tool. It's really old school, but it's a 20 to 24 inch casing that goes down versus a 12 inch one that's there now. And then a smaller screen. We'll get a well that should do 700 to 800 gallons a minute and not any longer have this problem of calcification on the screen. So the grant app's there. There's lots and lots of pages to it. Page 4 talks about what the project is. And basically, the proposed project includes plumbing the new well into the water system, extending the existing building around the new wellhead, foundation, walls, roof, etc. Installing the new turbine pump in it, and then the well controls that were in place in 1989 will be updated because every time you get into electrical stuff with LMI, the stuff that you put in that was good enough several years ago isn't good anymore, and there's always a cost for that. This will be built similar if I was to describe what it looks like as the South Column well down off of 8th Street. We had to do it shortly after that well was put in line, mostly because when they drilled the well device tipped over in the casing and it creased the stream. That caused sand to come in the system, so we pumped sand into the system. So we built that well just to the side of the building and built this building around it. When I say we, it was actually the developer of the golf course had to do all this because they actually put it in at the cost of them for us to have to support the golf course. But that's how that went around there, and it worked really well. Has a different pitched roof, but a little bit shallower, a little bit less in height. If you've seen it down there, it's near the train tracks off of 8th Street. But that's in essence what the project is. The cost to just do this building work around there and electrical and controls and security system and all that kind of stuff, is $436,000. So it's a big number. Our grant application is for $350,000. So our portion from the water utility fund will be $86,000. That's added to the $125,000 that we have to do for drilling the well. That's all on us. So our portion will be about $200,000 of a $550,000 project. It's not quite half. Let's see. So there's several, like I said, there's several different pages there. There's a breakout of the various budget items if you want to look at that on page 9, and then on page 10 gets into where the dollars and what it's all about. That number of 4520 is the most current population number from OFM. And we input the data, we say, okay, here's what our percentage of low amount of income is, and then our current rates, just the funds from our portion of this are from the Water Improvement Fund and the Water Operations Fund, primarily driven with all the connection fees we have, so we have a good base there to put towards this project. But we have to include our water rates in there and so forth. So that's the two handouts you have. You guys all had it in your packets, and they're back on the back table there. And again, this is the portion where it's set for public comment, Mayor, and on the block grant project itself, and the block grant program. Not that I can answer all the questions from the block grant board, but I could try to.
Any questions from the audience? From council?
No questions about this current project, but you mentioned that normally we apply for infrastructure grants, things like that. And you also mentioned that the rules come out, a month ahead of time. Do the rules change enough that we don't know what we can apply for next year, or how much do the rules differ from year to year?
I don't think they change a lot from year to year.
Okay.
The dollar amounts change mostly, but what drives most of it is the block grant board goes through this process about every 5 years and determines what are high priorities, medium priorities, and low priorities. If you don't fall on the high, you're wasting your ink and your ink trying to apply. And so infrastructure is a high one, water and wastewater. And so we've always bracketed our funds towards the infrastructure high category, and have been pretty successful, but that's because we stay in that lane where I can't really take on public service ones are prioritized or any of those.
Yeah, water wastewater is the, that's number one priority.
And it's easy to justify it as an area-wide benefit. Anytime you can do something like a project like this and not have to generate the revenue from within the utility and the rates, that's obviously we put those words in the applications to make sure they understand that. So that's the big benefit.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Item D, wastewater aeration lagoon upgrade, Department of Ecology.
Okay, so this is another project that we're working on. So Department of Ecology requires a meeting like this to just consider potential environmental, social, economic impacts of our project as part of the state environmental review process. CERP process is what they call it. And it has to be done prior to the final agreement. So we have a draft agreement now. The council has received this because it's just a draft format. That isn't back on the table yet. But this is for the project at this wastewater lagoon to basically replace what's down there now. And so the slides out, or this handout, the color handout back there, and it's really designed to be on an overhead projector and stuff, which we don't have the privilege of. So you have this, and if I talk about slides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's kind of what the intent is. But this project is, on the second slide, you can see the area of the wastewater lagoon in that yellow boundary. So the idea here is we're going to take the current lagoon, replace it, it's about 6 million gallons and change, replace it with a lagoon right next to it that's a little over 7 million gallons. We also have some replacement of the wastewater effluent lift station that's there. That lift station, if you recall, when they did 2018, is the one that we had a freeze up on it and had some real scrambling to make sure that we didn't send water to the creek and so forth. But it's old. It's also 1985 construction. And so the project basically is a new lagoon and an effluent pump station for that big total cost. And it's a huge cost, and I get it. We'll get to that in a second. So we had to consider alternatives. We had 6 different alternatives we looked at. Obviously, we always list the do-nothing option, which really isn't an option, but you have to list it. All the way up to a mechanical plant that this project, we're talking about almost $7 million, and mechanical plant's about $30 million. And so there's a really range of things that don't make a lot of sense. And so we tried to look at this as the best project that lasts the longest for the community to use for treating our wastewater. All the wastewater goes that way. It's the low end of town. From there we pump it up the high end of town. It was built in 1984-85 with a 40-year revenue bond that we're still paying on that had a design life of 15 years. So you can see the math didn't work very good. And it should have been replaced in 2000, and here we are at 21. And probably, if we keep on our track, it'll be replaced and usable in 2023. So we've gotten 23 years out of something that, if you visualize it, it was a 15 mil liner, which is basically 2 layers of viscose. If you put that together, that'd be 2 layers. And now we jump to 2 65 mil layers of material to keep from leaks and torn liners, etc., leaking into the aquifer. So it's a big deal, leaking into Dragon Creek in this case. Both dam safety from the Department of Ecology and the ecology folks that grant our permits are real anxious to see this happen. The lagoon doesn't have the right overflow protection. There's just a series of things that this is going to fix. So if you recall, on the 6th slide, we've selected alternative D, which is a dual liner, leak detection, just like the one we built up at the treatment lagoon. And this shows the footprint of where that, in red, where that new liner or that new lagoon will be. So it'll be just to the east of it. It's the area where, for the last year or so, we've been working on getting the right-of-ways vacated down there to get that all into wastewater utility ownership. So I don't know if you remember that, but that ordinance was a little over a year ago when we did that. So we've been working on this process to get this project ready to go. We have a draft agreement in, and again, we're going through these processes for the next step to send this back to ecology with saying that all of our environmental reviews done, all these meetings are done. If you go to slide number 7, that one probably shows the best. I mean, it breaks up the project costs. Now, we have a loan approved for $6.698 million. We applied for that to be funded partly with grants, similar to the storage lagoon projects that we did a few years ago. Unfortunately, under ecology's layer rules, we no longer qualify for hardship consideration, which in the past was a 50% grant. Their layers, or their levels of where hardship hits, is geared on how much your rates are, how much low on income, how big your population is, and all those kinds of things. And they honestly don't think our rates are high enough yet to qualify for hardship. So, and there's other factors, but we don't meet the hardship category. So this is all on us. Okay? So 6.698 is what is estimated to do the work. And since this time, we've been able to acquire other funds. If you remember, some of the funds came through on the American Rescue Plan, the $1.2 million resolution you did a while back that we get it over 2 phases, but that infrastructure and that is a real high priority in all what gets paid out of that. So by taking that 1.2, we will have about $1 million saved at the end of this budget year that we're working right now. And then we have next year, we have 22 and 2023 towards this project. So maybe a little bit more, that my goal is we'll be buying down the loan rather than taking 6.90, maybe we're at $5 million. Maybe we're at 4.5. We don't have to take all of it, obviously, so we'll take as little as we can to set up the loan, because this loan is set up at 1.2% for 20 years. You know, the days of 40 years and having things wear out before it's ever paid for, that was crazy then, but that's probably all the funding the city had. So that's probably the way they had to do it. We have about 1,755 sewer customers, and so about $12 of our current monthly rate, or the monthly rate when this project's done, will be going towards the payment of this loan. So it's not a $12 increase, it's $12 that's going to come out of our loan, out of our current rates at that time. As you recall, we've done a 2% increase per year, which is about 80 cents of the sewer rate. There's utility taxes and all the other taxes are on that too. But we've been able to build our sewer rates up slowly, that when this loan starts being paid, and it should be 2024, because they started 1 year after initiation of operation, we'll be at a rate base where we won't have to do a big jump to get there. We'll be there. Environmental impacts are on slide 8. It talks about, we're keeping inside the footprint of the property we own. Yeah, there's some trees will have to come down, but there's some creek surface that will be protected. It's not in the floodplain area. There's a lot of yardage of material going in there. 40 to 50,000 cubic yards is what we'll build the dike down there. So it'll be a pretty good sized construction project over 2 years when it happens. There aren't any endangered species of deer or things like that down there, thankfully, so we're in pretty good shape that way. Mitigation efforts is the next slide, is slide 9, and obviously there'll be dust control. The challenge might be how we get trucks traffic down in. Now they're hauling material in there to build the dike. I mean, that's a real interesting thing that will come up. But we have to use all the best management practices to make sure we don't have spills into the creek and all those kinds of things as part of the project. Our goal is to bid this project early this next year, spring, April, May-ish, with construction start in the summer. From a phasing standpoint, the material will go in, and then it has to sit through the winter. It just has to sit there and load the ground underneath of it, because the engineers are worried about, obviously once you put the liners in, you want shifting to occur and so forth, so they have to let it sit for a period of about 6 months, just let the material sit there. And then they'll come back, and we'll have a lagoon in place in operation in 2023. So that's the nature of this project. Again, you all have a copy of the agreement, the draft agreement. There's some date fixes that still work on there and things like that. But that isn't before you tonight for action, because we still have to get all of our stuff back to ecology, and then they give us the final agreement and give us a certain window to get that approved and so forth, and go from there. So that's it from this handout.
Any questions from the council? From the audience?
Just a couple of questions for you, Roger. Will the new lagoon, will that be the same size as the old one? It looks about the same on the slide.
It'll be about 1 million gallons in storage capacity bigger, mostly because of height.
What happens to the old one once the new one comes online?
So we have to clean out the sludge that's in there, and then we are going to keep it there. So once we get the new dike done, you have to have an emergency overflow that will be able to flow into the current cell as an emergency situation only. But ideally, that will be over time and dry out on its own, or maybe get rain in and dry out. But that structure will be there so that as growth might occur, one day the council may decide that there needs to be some more lagoon storage down there. I'm not going to say the population is going to double, but obviously if it did, that's the size it's going to take. And so that would still be there.
Silly, my next question. I was wondering, with the population surge here in your park, how's that going to impact paying off the slope? If the population continues to surge like it is, will we pay it off earlier?
Well, we can. That's the nice thing about it. If we could pay it off earlier, we will. Obviously, well, I would suggest they would. I won't be here to make that decision. But, no, it can be paid off. I'd love to tell you there won't be another cost of some other infrastructure issue. We have done a lot of study relative to reclaiming some of the water that we're taking out to the spray farm and sending it to the golf course. You know, that is a thing where it not only takes less groundwater out of our aquifer, it's just a smart way to use some of that water. It may mean less area at the airport needed, but it has a big cost too. And so there's going to be a time where that really makes the most sense, and there's going to be investment there. So I can't tell you that it would ever make it cheaper.
My last question, you said it and I didn't hear it. What size is the thickness of the new liner?
2 65 mil liners.
So that's 130?
Well, in essence, yeah, but it's 2 65 mil pieces, and then there's this barrier in between there that lets water that might leak through the first layer go down to the drain system. And so it is, 65 mils, not quite 1/8 of an inch of thickness. So it's substantially different than the visqueen we have now.
So I guess the 15 millimeter, they don't make them anymore.
They can't believe it's in there in the first place.
Hi, it may be in there, but I'm curious, do you anticipate both for this project, if it comes through, and the previous one you were mentioning, the ongoing maintenance charges would be the same, or do you think they would add to the general budget on an ongoing basis?
Well, from a well standpoint, on that project, it should go down. Instead of that extra 15 to 20,000 every 5 to 7 years. But, I say that, and Brad, our streets guy, is in here now. We have 3 other infrastructure pieces within the city we're fighting with pumps right now, and so it's just one of the things that never go away. The more of those we have. The Lagoon project, it's going to function basically the same way our current one does. It's just going to have a better liner system and so forth. So, again, I'd love to tell you that the prices are less, but
Yeah, but don't expect any outline.
no, yeah, no.
Survey and maintenance fees.
That helps.
Okay.
We have an issue with the effluent pump station down there now, and these pumps going in, or the new station going in, will certainly make that better. So,
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and turn to council meeting. Item 7 under new business. Item A is fireworks discussion, and we'll start with Councilmember Craig. Fireworks discussion. Do you want it? When do you want it? Winterfest?
Winterfest would be the best. It really would. It would promote businesses in the community and generate funds. And I have other issues that I'm working on now. So, Winterfest.
Okay. Councilmember Rath? Councilmember Stapp?
Winterfest.
Councilmember Stapp?
Winterfest.
Councilmember Schulz?
Winterfest.
Can I get a motion in a second?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next up, item B, approval of CDBG grant applications in order to well number 1. Roger, would you entertain us?
well, just kind of what I said earlier is we need the authority to apply, and so your motion would basically be along those lines, apply for the grant or block grant funding for that project, and we will get this off next week to them. And
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion in a second. Any comments by the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item C, Cedar Road change order number 3. Roger?
you want to cover this one, Brad, or me? So, this change order is before you when I find it. So this is a project out on Cedar Road that we're getting really close to being done. This work has long since been done. But as the deep sewer is going, this is a problem with deep sewer again. At 25 to 27 feet deep, there's some real struggles out there, especially when you have defined rights of way and fences and all the other kind of stuff. And when you have utility providers that either don't know where their infrastructure is or won't give you the mapping to guess where their infrastructure is, or in some cases, they didn't even know they had infrastructure there. So between phone conduits, phone lines, CenturyLink conduits, gas lines, power lines, we went through the whole gamut. And then when you're at 25 feet deep and trying to support all this kind of stuff, it just takes longer than anybody knows. And when we don't show it on the plans, it's really hard for them to bid a project with these kind of things in place. And quite honestly, we ask the utility providers to put their stuff on the ground. We'll pick it up in a survey, it's not there, or there's twice as many things there. So that's what happened throughout the whole project from 6th Street almost to the end, probably 3/4 of the way. And it was really where we were putting crossings out for our sewers to the airport side, primarily is where we get them, but we also had the same problem going to the private side. So this is for almost $30,000 or $29,000. Well justified when you've seen what they had to go through, and it is complete and done. This change order has been approved by the funding agency, EDA, who's providing 80% of the funding. The other 20% comes from the curb loan. We're well under the curb loan maximum amount. We're actually going to be giving money back to them, giving money back to the EDA both. So it is 100% funded from a project cost standpoint. Questions?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments by the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 8, resolutions, we don't have any. Item number 9, ordinance first reading. Item A, ordinance 2021-002, 2022 ad valorem taxes. Any comments on that? Okay, we'll pass them out to the second reading, next meeting. Item 10, consent agenda. Item E is approval of voucher claim check numbers 39,782 through 39,811 for the amounts of $489,765.82 for the second half of October 2021. Item B is approval of payroll checks number 14,384 through 14,216, including EFT debits, PMFL, 941 taxes and health benefits in the amount of $122,644.57 for the month of October 2021. We have a motion and second. Comments by the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, item 11. Council questions, comments, or reports. We will start with Councilman Scott on your budget, if you wish to speak about it.
On the budget, I looked through that and everything looks fairly reasonable. There was a lot of extra budgeted for cybersecurity. So I was wondering if you could explain why there's so much extra for cybersecurity?
Want to do that? So this last week, AWC has held a cybersecurity conference, and while I was at a conference with the fire district that I belong to as well, cybersecurity is a big deal. And so I was able to talk to them, and they have companies out there that are doing these kind of things, and I mentioned how much I put in the budget, and he said, well, that'll be a nice start. So fire districts, cities, Issaquah, others in the west side, municipalities our size and others are all now running this problem of getting hit for these rather large ransom payments to people that they get in, can, mess up your system, and then you have to buy to get it back, basically. So we have talked a while ago about that. Spokane County Fire District 4 got hit and paid a ransom to get 80% of the information back. So we're right across the street, and when that happened, I started asking the question, and Debbie checked with AWC and the insurance and so forth. I think we got a grant, a small little grant to help us go down the path. But at the workshop the other day, and I printed off, the slides from that workshop, and the presentation was also on there, and so I forwarded that to Debbie to have a chance to look at it, and Mayor too. But what is happening out there is insurance companies used to have insurance for this. Well, the insurance companies are getting hit for the cost and so forth. And so they have a 10-point plan here now that you have to be able, well, I didn't get out of the hearing if you had to show them you can do this yet or not, but this is what's coming down the pipe if you want to have insurance for a cyber threat or a cyber hit. There's a cybersecurity framework, engage external expertise. We don't have anybody, we don't have a staff person. This is way above anything that we do, obviously. Secure backups, 24/7 monitoring, proactive defense, multi-factor and authentication is a must. And I don't know all this stuff, so I'm just reading this off here, okay? Staff cybersecurity awareness training, deploy endpoint protection, vulnerability management, documented incident response plans. You have to have all this before you can even get the insurance on it. Yeah. And we are not prepared for this at all. So we've talked about it the last couple of budget cycles. I'm not even saying we may need to have a staff person hired. Maybe it's not just a straight IT guy only, but that may be a big chunk of his role is to do this stuff. Because our IT department, Jessica, our utility clerk, because she's the youngest and is not afraid to push the buttons and makes the things work, is how I look at it. But so anyway, that's why. So that number is woefully short from what I've been told. But I don't know how much to put in there, and I really didn't know where we need to go. I just know that we have a vulnerability out there that we haven't addressed, and now AWC is saying, well, you're not going to be seeing insurance for it either if you don't address it. So we're going to be pushed down this path. That's just the start. That's just the scrapes the tip of the iceberg.
So this is kind of my area of expertise. I actually help a lot of people with compliance and do all these sort of things. The cybersecurity, it used to be that if you had $5,000, you could pay off the ransomware. But this last year, there's been cities that are similar to Deer Park with the same sort of water systems that have been hacked and ransomware used on those sort of things. I think Deer Park is well past the point of needing to hire an IT person. Probably need to budget $55,000 for their salary. I don't know what the service plans will cost for government, because that's not the realm that I typically work in. But yeah, you definitely need to have all those compliance, the manuals and documentation, online backups, multi-factor authentication, even USB security keys as an alternative to multi-factor authentication. These are all things that are easy and there are easy to implement. But the first step in doing all of that, and I have said this repeatedly, is everybody needs to have their own login credentials with an email address. And as our world moves forward technologically, we need to be able to have access to email accounts so we can access things securely and have that as part of our process. So again, I think we need to make sure that emails for all city employees and all elected officials for the city are being backed up in compliance and retained in accordance with the state laws too, which I am concerned that they are not at this point. So thank you, Roger, for that information. I appreciate that. I wanted to find out a little bit more about that. The other thing is regarding the budget and the budget meeting is I spent a lot of time talking to MRSC about that meeting. That meeting was not held in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act. That requires, according to RCW 42.30.080, that the majority of the members of the governing body be delivered a written notice personally, by mail, by fax, or electronic mail. So again, we're going back to electronic mail, but we did not get a written notice about that meeting, which we should have done. Also, that meeting, according to the governor's proclamations, because of the pandemic and the Open Public Meeting Act, is required to allow remote access. That was not provided for that meeting. Something that you all need to be aware of is that any council member that attends a meeting that is not in compliance with the Open Meeting Act can be fined for that attendance. Now, nothing was voted on, but action was taken. And that is...
There was discussion.
What's that?
There was discussion.
Yes, and that is in violation of the Open Public Meeting Act.
Now, you guys got your mail out of your folders. Your meeting was in that packet. You got a phone call Monday night from me.
Phone call is not a written notice.
The written notice was in your packet.
That was not personally delivered.
It's up to you to pick it up.
That's not the requirement of the law.
Oversight.
So, it was also, I was indicated that the meeting was going to be on a different day via the phone call than what was in the written notice. So I had my son scheduled for a surgery and was unable to attend because of that. I could have potentially made it work to attend remotely, but that was not an option. So that is something that is required at this point. So that is all actually, I would like to add that I would like to have the meeting minutes reflect that I have protested the meeting for the special meeting for the budget workshop.
Duly noted. Okay, any questions on the budget?
Yes, a couple of things to add to that, and then I have some other questions to follow up on as well. I would agree that we need to hire an IT person. I would say immediately. I think that would be a good thing to do this next year, as soon as possible. I would expand that role to also have them supervising a part-time employee who would be helpful in creating copy and publicity information for communication. One of the recurring complaints that I hear is that we don't communicate well, and I think one of the ways to do that is to communicate to people how they want to be communicated with, not how it's easy for us. It's one of those just customer service pieces. So I would suggest we hire the IT person to make sure that we're addressing the cybersecurity, all the different things that we need to do there to be in compliance with the law and safe, but also have them supervise a part-time communications person to write and maintain the website, social media pages. There are some simple ways that regular daily post, this is what's happening. We would be doing our part to make that really simple for citizens to be engaged. They don't have to pay attention. Of course, people would still miss different parts of it, But there are so many easy tools to use there that we could do better, and that would make a lot of sense. So I believe the IT person should. I don't think one person can do both of those jobs. They tend to be very different ways of communicating and working. They tend to be very different personality types, and so we probably need both. And I don't think at this point we need a full-time communications person, because if that was all they were doing, 15 or 20 hours a week would be enough to take that load off of Jessica, have the website maintained and updated, as well as social media and different. There's so many things that can even just be put in the newspapers that would be helpful as far as that goes. A couple of things to add to that laundry list of items for the IT director and communications person to take care of would be pictures of Deer Park on our Deer Park website. My wife once called and asked, I would love to visit this park, this beautiful picture. And that picture isn't of anywhere in Deer Park. It's a stock photo. Totally understand how that gets put in there, but might be time for an upgrade to at least pictures of here. You know, that would be good. There are lots of places that will give you some feedback on your website. Again, Richie probably knows plenty of people. I know a couple of people that do website reviews and can give us feedback on what's working and what's not working. It's old. That's something that could be maintained and updated by those people if we're able to hire them and bring them on board. I would agree that, a great first step is to make it easy to comply with the law, keep us from being sued. The email is a big security risk at this point, and a big liability. It's not something you have to use if you don't want to use it, but it's something that we need to have available, and those of us that would use it properly accounted for and followed up on. So, and that would make delivery of various announcements really simple. And then we would have those dates in writing so that we don't have miscommunications there. And to echo what Richie said, the way I read the law, a discussion is action based on what the RCWs say. So I know there was no vote taken, and I agree
There's no action taken.
That's great. That's your opinion, but the law clearly says consideration.
So you want us to stay a small town, but yet you want big town rules.
Mayor Verzel, I was speaking and trying to explain.
Okay.
Thank you. It's a state law. Every size town has to abide by it. So, did I say that I wanted this to stay a small town? I don't think so.
Small town feelings.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll work on that. It's a communication point for me. So, yes, and again, echoing Richie, the phone call I received, I'd written down in my calendar a certain day. As far as I know, it would be very strange for us to both hear a wrong day and have it be the same wrong day. So that's again, written communication would help with that. I would have been glad to refer to an email and be like, oh yeah, that's the correct day, and be glad to do that, but I couldn't. So those were all the same there. As far as other budget issues, on page 16 of the revenue sources, there was a point about playground, the parents' field money funding. Let me go to it. Where goes page 16? Yes, Parents Park. Line item 3508, there at the end of that number. We have $25,000 budgeted there. I was just curious what the plans were for that. Are there still current plans for that?
Basically, what they are is we put it into the park system. For 2022, we got $50,000 into the park system. It doesn't really matter which park it goes to.
That's great.
So to answer your question on that, this fall, 3 sets of parents, citizens, pick playground equipment for the country club park.
Okay.
Brand's got it ordered, it's on its way. So we can move it from one park to the other park to the other park. It depends on what the priorities are and what the people want.
Sure. So playground equipment was bought for the
Country club park.
Country Club Drive. Thank you.
And they picked it up.
Excellent. Yeah, that park has been bare. It's small, so that'll be helpful for that park. And you're saying it's delivered this fall, and I would assume it's installed
This spring.
Okay. Great.
And then also, Red Wainwright and I discussed going review on 6th for future. There's no playground equipment there. If you're gonna have the housing units going in there at 76 units. So we were thinking going somewhere to there with some people there in the neighborhood. Because there's nothing there.
I know you're referring to the housing development on 6th. Is there a specific part of that the city owns that we would be?
By the water towers. We have a park
Oh,
behind the
thank you, the
water towers.
Arboretum?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Good. And I was, one of the goals that would be great for future budgets would be if we were, if I believe correctly, was the possible cost of the splash pad that we were aiming for, was that around $250,000?
No, the total project was around 5.
Okay, thank you. Oh, that's great. I feel like that's something we could save up for, and something we could at least aim for over a couple of years. So that would be something that in future budget proposals, that would be neat to see.
What I have proposed is for next meeting, we're going to talk about the pool and some alternatives. So that would be an item that would come up with interest.
Okay. Thank you. A couple of other, and this might be along the same vein. Right now we have that unspent police and law enforcement budget simply because we can't get more officers. I know we've been trying, I appreciate the efforts. Doesn't look like that's going to change through the county at this point anytime soon. Can we simply save those extra funds and turn them into a reserve to help build up capital for?
There is a 400,000 reserve we have.
The one
We have a 4,000
okay.
reserve for police.
Okay. Is there an easy way to just say any unspent funds from that line item could be held in reserve for that same purpose in the future?
That's the only not. You get to vote on it.
Okay. Is that something we do through motion tonight? Is that something we
Just put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Caleb,
Yes, sir.
if you look on page 20 and 19 and 20 in your budget document,
Yes?
okay, so that's a general reserve fund that I know many years ago, Dee was involved in setting that up, and that was a savings account that was being built up years ago towards potential law enforcement discussion, something further. So the 465,000, I think that's what Tim's talking about right now.
Oh, thank you.
That portion that was used for the purchase of the golf course, and then the golf course and the general fund paid it back. So that sits in there now as a reserve that hasn't had anything added to for a series of years. There are, from year to year to year, as the budget document gets done, there are some potential for direction that the council could give simply to, let that thing keep building up towards something for the future. Again, other councils can use it for something else. I mean, it's been done and then paid back. So that was set up way back when. And that's just rode along there at that number for a long time. So that's what that fund means.
Thank you. I had assumed that was along the lines of a emergency fund, of a sort of a general,
It's been
if
used for
something
that.
catastrophic happens.
Yeah, it's been used for that. I mean, the part of the EDA project, we had to use a little bit of it to get going, and then that fund paid it back. So it's been used for that a couple different times. But that was the original intent way back then, was to build a fund, start a fund to build towards that.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And then just in general, and this may be something for Brad and Roger and other leaders to help answer as well. I was just curious from a general perspective, if we felt like we had enough employees, if we were hiring the right number of new employees to keep up with growth and expansion, I was curious about things like our turnover rate, if you guys had any big dream projects that you feel like your department could really do well on, if we set aside the funds and the people to make it happen. Just kind of one of those checks on how are our employees doing, and what do you need over the next couple of years to continue doing a good job?
Usually that's taken care of between communications between all of your offices.
Okay.
We usually meet in January and figure out to do a plan. Roger does a road plan, Brad does his plan. You know, you either add to it or subtract from it.
Sure.
One or the other.
Okay.
But we do have 13 employees, and cities bigger than us have twice as many. So we are working very fearlessly.
I knew a lot of people had been covering multiple roles, and I think I was just in this current job environment, there are a lot of attractive positions out there, and I want to make sure that we're keeping up and we're hiring enough and doing all those things.
We have no turnover.
Okay.
Tim, can I add? Yeah, so I mean, most, you know, I've been there 30 years, Mark's been there 31 years. We have a lot of people been here for a long time, and we've been blessed with being able to hire local people that have stayed around and wanted the job. And so we've been fortunate that way. There's a couple of us getting close to moving on. So transition is a big thing in my world and my thoughts. That's why we hired a building code person this last year, planning, code enforcement, to branch some of the stuff off from mine. One of our current staff, parks guy, is going to be moved to the water and wastewater operations side after the first year. Got him signed up for a 2-year apprenticeship program with Evergreen Rural Water to become a certified water and wastewater operator, which closely coincides when I leave and closely coincides when Mark leaves. And so, yeah, we'll have an extra body for a year or so, and then we'll be back to 3 or 4 people just in the water and wastewater operations side. And then at the same time, Brad's going to be able to hire a new parks person with a new job description that's more geared towards some of the parks things. And I'm never going to tell you we're staff rich, but at the same token, lots of staff, that's where the money goes. You know, so we've been fortunate as this community to have dollars to do projects and dollars to do other things, because it isn't all going to salaries and benefits and so forth. Because once those come on, they stay. I mean, they never go away. So, yeah, as it grows more, there's going to be a need for more, without a doubt. You know, the IT person you were talking about earlier, or Richard talking about earlier, and so forth. I mean, that's another staff person, and then a staff person's $75,000 to $100,000. I mean, they have benefits and all that kind of stuff. And so those dollars come out, and they're all general fund people typically. I mean, so that's the fund that takes the hit. Where we take one of our parks guys and move into water and wastewater, that's a rate-based coverage of those things. And so, you know, it's just one of those that this council has never been hire lots and lots of bodies, and we've been a lot of guys cover a lot of hats. It's getting tougher, and that's slowly but surely we're carving things apart from multiple tasks of one person.
Yeah, and I was assuming that it had been going well. It appeared to have been going well, but also assumed that if we didn't prepare for that and hire the right people at the right times, that would get really challenging. And it would hurt our ability to deliver services well and to do a good job for folks, because if we just spread our employees too thin, they can't keep up. Yeah.
With Sean moving, you know, the job description that we're working on right now is going to be more of a groundskeeper, like a professional groundskeeper. You know, every time we do something, we add park, and it gets bigger and more in depth, and more sprinkler systems, and things are getting more high tech. You know, we need somebody that knows pesticides, knows fertilizers, knows soil. You know, we've always just done it as a maintenance department, but the next guy is going to need to be somebody more to stay on top of that. And on the street side of things, we have basically a guy for every piece of equipment. And then we have Roger or me, we kind of run whatever piece needs to be ran at that time. Roger's kind of our backup, so Jake seems to be interested in being a backup also. But I've always looked at it as if we can plow the whole town, plow the snow, plow the whole town in around 12 hours or less. That's kind of that, you know, but as we add streets, we get bigger, you know, we're going to be pushing past that point. So, you know, there's just those things to consider, you know, that right now we've got a person for every piece, and, you know, but like you say, as town grows, parks grow, and things like that, we'll definitely need to grow.
Thank you. That was more just exploratory, no specific.
Okay, do you have any more questions?
I think so.
Ron, comments?
Yeah. I'm gonna take this off for a second. A little easier to talk. So, as most of you know, about last week, Deer Park was hit with multiple cases of vandalism. There was, I call him a Deer Park tagger, going around spray painting graffiti all over our buildings. And there was also an instance of somebody driving with their car with a pellet gun shooting windows out of cars. Well, I want to say a special thank you to the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, Mayor Tim Burzel, Deer Park Scope, the detectives that the Sheriff's Office provided to help work many hours to try to catch these perpetrators. And they were two different groups of people. They weren't the same. And also, I would like to do a special thank you to city employee Jared Roberg. The night that the sheriff's deputies apprehended the Deer Park tagger, Jared saw the individual tagging things and going along his way, and he tipped off the police officers to his location, so they were able to light him up and get him out. So, and that is why each and every one of us, we have a responsibility to keep our community safe and to be eyes for each other, for our neighbors, for community, and to let the law enforcement know when there is something going down, to help them, because there's only a couple of cops that are on the beat at a time. And with the current situation that's going on, with very difficult trying to find law enforcement officers because of changes in federal and state laws, it's important that all of us have our eyes open to help our local law enforcement be able to do their job and apprehend these people. And, you know, this what was about a little over a week, and they were all caught. So again, thank you to the Sheriff's Department, the detectives, Deer Park Scope, and Mayor Verzel for coordinating together and apprehending these individuals.
Thank you, Ron.
Can I add a little bit more to that story? So Jared, who found this, he's a kid that went to work for the city as a part-time parks guy right out of high school. In fact, I think he was in high school still. He's been with us a lot of years already, and he's really pretty young. And he's been a parks guy, he's been a snowplower operator, he's been all that. And about 2 years ago, he took it upon himself to become a certified wastewater operator, and now he works in the water and sewer side. It's ironic that he actually was going down to the wastewater plant because we had an intrusion alarm that night. Not that it happened down there, but he was upset because he's one of the guys that had to paint the buildings that the tagger was tagging. So he swore he's going to catch this guy. And it just so happened we had an alarm at the right time, and he saw him moving around town and trailed him around and called it in. So, but he's a kid that's worked for us forever. I mean, that's like I say, we're lucky because we've got a lot of guys that have grown up here and want to stay here, raise their families here, and they take pride in what they got. So we're pretty fortunate that way.
Okay. Dean, do you have any comments or questions? Reports? Dean? Very good. Move on to item 12, interested citizens or communications, requests and comments from the audience on unrelated agenda items. Vicki?
Thank you for this opportunity. Recently, I wrote a guest article for the Deer Park Tribune. This has been challenged by Councilmember Stapp on both his Facebook page and in the Deer Park Gazette. I do not have a Facebook page and I do not subscribe to the Gazette. So this is my only forum that I have left to openly respond to Councilmember Stapp and Councilmember Schut. I cherish the Bill of Rights. It's the reason I'm here today. Councilmember Stapp has a Facebook page entitled Councilman Caleb Stapp. Many people have said that if they disagree with him on his page, he will delete their comment and block it from his page. He regularly criticizes other council members too on that page and publicly. By these actions, he has shown me that he cannot work in a group, and in my opinion, makes him ineffective as a council member. I heard him say during a council meeting that he would like to have the technology available to new people he doesn't want to hear in council meetings. Even if this was made in jest, it's not funny. This statement and actions are completely against the idea of free speech. Councilmember Stapp's idea of censorship represses the liberties which the founding fathers fought so desperately for. In resolution number 2020-006, it states, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Deer Park, Washington, declaring a state of emergency with respect to COVID-19, invoking the emergency powers set forth in Chapter 38.52 RCW and all other applicable laws, and authorizing the mayor to request state, federal, or other funding as necessary on behalf of the city to address the impacts of COVID-19 on the city. The way this is to be understood is that the mayor is the go-to person for funding that is available to the city from all sources, federal and state. Without it, the city would have no one to address this issue when time is short. This resolution does not give him power over vaccine mandates, mask mandates, or anything else of that sort. This is a financial issue only, nothing more. This resolution also states in Section 1, a state of emergency within the city of Deer Park is declared as a result of the COVID-19 virus and shall remain in effect until such time as the City Council determines the virus is no longer presents an immediate threat to public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city. Currently, we are seeing about 300 people a day testing positive for COVID-19. Unprecedented shortages of everything from computer chips to chicken wings, jobs that require people-to-people contact are going unfilled, and businesses are closing their doors due to employees not showing up for work as scheduled. This pandemic is having a ripple effect on our economy. To rescind Mayor Burzell's emergency powers for federal or state funds now when things are so uncertain is foolish in my opinion. Councilmember Stapp said, just like the stimulus checks were received by the vast majority of individuals with no need to prove any hardship due to COVID, so these funds were distributed far and wide to government entities of all sizes with no need of emergency. He is incorrect in this statement. Stimulus checks were issued to individuals to stimulate the economy due to the impact of COVID. This was considered an emergency at the federal level. Cities did not receive money freely. The federal government issued funds to the states. Then the state of Washington had cities apply for those funds. The first time the city of Deer Park received money, it was distributed to businesses that were in trouble financially, and they applied to the city for help. Loss of business would have severely impacted the economy of this city. This was an economic emergency due to COVID. The second time the city applied for funds, Mayor Burzell used his emergency powers to obtain funding when the application deadline was before the next city council meeting. Due to the 4th of July holiday, council members may have been out of town or even forgotten about the meeting. Mayor Burzell signed the paperwork necessary for the application, then asked for ratification of his signature by City Council. This money was used for the $6 million water sewer project, and the $1.2 million received by the city has reduced our tax burden. This was an efficient way to deal with this particular time and not a power grab. Councilmember Stapp also states, Scholz declared that I and other council members have been actively against doing studies to find out what the costs are in reference to our prioritization of local police department, rehabbing City Hall, and more investments in our parks. My statement is true. To be actively against doing a study, you do nothing. Neither Mr. Stapp nor Mr. Schut have made any motions for cost studies on police, building a new city hall, or upgrades to city parks. This is supported by all the council minutes since January of this year. The pseudo study done by Jason Upchurch was taken as an accurate cost by Stapp and Schut. Mr. Upchurch never took into consideration the services that are contracted out by the police department and went so far as to say that he had people who would police our city without having any vetting process in place. This was sloppy work to depend on for expenditures the city would be undertaking. In August, Mayor Verzel asked the City Council for up to $100,000 to hire a consultant for police protection. Councilman Stapp was asked to chair this committee. However, recently he went to Mayor Verzel and asked to be relieved of this assignment. This action is inconsistent with his article. Stapp still says he wants police, a city hall, laptops, etc. But as a person on a fixed income, I see if I can afford it before buying it. That is what cost studies are for. I believe that this should pertain to all governmental entities too.
Thank you. Anybody else? Brandon?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Just a point of clarification, one item. How much money is being budgeted for cybersecurity?
Well,
51, wasn't it?
but there's 51,000, but that's cyber and some computer stuff that has to happen, so
Okay.
not very much to start with.
My other question is, when this budget meeting that you called about, when was that supposed to take place? What day?
On Wednesday, 6 o'clock.
Is that the day that you canceled?
27th, what's that?
I kind of came across that he called a meeting, or you called him to say meeting is such and such a day, and it never happened?
The meeting did happen.
It did not, or did it?
It did.
Okay.
Brandon?
Okay, just a couple of things. First of all, I just want to state that I appreciate everybody that ran for office. It takes a lot of guts. Whether you like me or hate me, or whether I like or hate you, I respect you running. But I'm going to say something that happened in primary season that's very important, and I'm going to make a suggestion. The city of Deer Park, the actual city workers here are first class. They're not my friends. They haven't asked me to come and speak on their behalf. They're first class people, all of them. And some of them are probably truly too qualified to be in a city like Deer Park. They should probably be in a bigger city. But I had some citizens come forward during the primary election, and they said, "You're the political guy, right?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "We're concerned that some of our city staff are being harassed by the candidates running." And I had to ask, was it Tim Verzal, because he's the mayor, he's the executive branch? They said, no, it wasn't him. I have no idea who it was. I have no idea if it actually happened. But I'm just going to say this. You've got a great staff here. They deserve to be protected, respected. And so my idea is, we're talking about throwing out positions that we need to hire. I think it would be appropriate if you guys thought about hiring a director of human resources. Because I think there's some people on this council, and maybe some that are incoming, that have not a clue how to treat people. And I don't want to end on a bad note, so I'll just say, again, thank you to everybody who ran. And thank you to Richie Scott, Mary Bass. I don't know if I'll be at a meeting again during your tenure, but I wish you both the best of luck. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you. Anybody else?